I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Welcome to this Wednesday, November the 1st edition of Just the Truth, broadcasting from the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Here's what's in the news today, and we've got a busy one for you. The White House is blasting House Republicans for setting an unprecedented bar in their new bill that gives $14.3 billion in aid to Israel. Joe Biden is not happy with the GOP House majority right now. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Also, a very peculiar response from FBI Director Christopher Wray. He had an awkward moment during questioning by Senator Rick Scott on the simple question of whether our country is safer under Joe Biden's watch. You're going to be interested to see and hear this response. Also, with Halloween last night and goblins and witches everywhere, do you believe in demons? Have you ever had a Ouija board? You know what a Ouija board is? Some Catholic priest are warning people this may not just be a board game, that this can lead to serious consequences. Let's begin with an update on the war in Israel. The White House is blasting House Republicans for setting what they're calling an unprecedented bar in their new bill that gives $14.3 billion in aid to Israel. House Republicans rolled out the 13-page bill earlier this week on Monday afternoon, which would completely offset the foreign aid by rescinding, and this is what has Biden and the Democrats sweating here, it would rescind the $14.3 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed last year. Specifically, and this is what you're going to like, specifically the bill targets some of the $80 billion in the package that allocated for the Internal Revenue Service to audit more Americans and to hire more IRS agents. A White House memo penned by Deputy Press Secretary and Senior Communications Advisor Andrew Bates, it was titled, House Republicans Set an Unprecedented Bar for Helping Israel Defend Itself and Other Critical National Security Needs. So here's what it said. Here's what Bates wrote in the memo. Despite strong bipartisan agreement that the United States must support Israel as it defends itself after the worst terrorist attack in its history, House Republicans are engaging in a dangerous political stunt that for the first time in American history demands emergency national security funding be fully offset. Though the United States has delivered urgent defense funding to a wide range of allies over many years, this has never been a requirement, they write. He added, why should Israel be singled out in this way? Well, because we support Israel, because Israel is God's chosen people. He wrote, why should it be treated differently, especially when they are subjected to the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust? Bates went on to write that Republicans are politicizing our national security interests in such a way that would set an unacceptable precedent that jeopardizes the United States' ability to reliably support Israel's self-defense in the future. The White House memo also said that the bill endangers other critical bipartisan national security priorities like humanitarian aid for innocent civilians in Gaza, who are also victims of the Hamas terrorists, and helping Ukraine stop Putin from butchering their citizens with Iranian weapons. Bates wrote, this is a time for all of us to come together, as American people have, and not undermine our national security with political stunts that prioritize internal point scoring over our safety in the world. Now, again, what they're really objecting to here is the Republicans may have found a way to get rid of this additional funding to the IRS. The Democrats and Joe Biden are not happy, of course. Newly elected House Speaker Mike Johnson is expected to hold a vote on this aid, but potentially as early as Thursday. The bill is expected to put Democrats in a rather delicate position as they're also pushing for Israel aid, but will likely reject the bill's removal of the funds from President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, the act that actually had nothing to do with inflation, you'll recall. The cuts to the IRS funding is going to really be liked by conservatives. Representative Chip Roy from Texas told The Hill that he would support Israel aid if it was offset with budget cuts. He said the American people must see that it's going to cost something if we're going to give another $14 billion to Israel. So I'm for it, but it should be paid for with real money, not budgetary gimmicks, he said. The Inflation Reduction Act granted an $80 billion boost to the IRS over a 10-year period, with more than half of those funds approved with the intention of helping the agency crack down on tax evasion. The funding would have gone towards filling 87,000 additional IRS agents. Just 2 Republican lawmakers so far have come out against support for Israel, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey from Kentucky as well. You may recall that earlier this month, Biden asked Congress to approve a $106 billion supplemental funding request. It had the $14.3 billion for Israel, but more than $60 billion additional monies for Ukraine. It included just over $13 billion for U.S. border security and an additional $10 billion in humanitarian assistance. Speaker Johnson made clear over the weekend that he would not put the entire package together on the House floor, something that the Democrats have really wanted to do, is to vote on it in one package. He said, we're going to move a standalone Israel funding bill this week in the House. I know our colleagues, our Republican colleagues in the Senate, have a similar measure, he said, but there are lots of things going on around the world that we have to address, the Speaker said, and we will. But right now, what's happening in Israel takes the most immediate attention. He said, and I think we've got to separate that and get it through. I believe there will be bipartisan support for that, and I'm going to push it very hard. Speaker Johnson's first act as Speaker on the House floor was to pass a bipartisan resolution condemning the Hamas terrorist group for its attack on Israel last month. Things are getting a little more complicated for President Joe Biden, as Muslims and Arab American groups are starting to protest, and they're showing the power of the vote. They've given an initial deadline by 5 p.m. yesterday that if Joe Biden did not demand a ceasefire, they were going to withdraw their support of the president. Well, it didn't happen, or not to my knowledge. Not sure what their next move is. The National Muslim Democratic Council, which includes Democrat Party leaders from swing states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, some of those key states that Biden has to have, well, any presidential candidate for that matter, promised in an open letter to Joe Biden and Democrat leadership that they would withhold their support from any candidate or politician that does not advocate for a ceasefire. Concerns that Biden and the administration have been too pro-Israel are growing as the president continues to pledge his support to Israel during the war with the terrorists, of course, trying to defeat the horrible terrorist acts of Hamas. The letter reads, we pledge to mobilize Muslim, Arab, and allied voters to withhold endorsement, support, or votes for any candidate who did not advocate for a ceasefire and endorse the Israeli offensive against the Palestinian people. The letter reads, we will mobilize increased voter turnout to make our voices heard. The state of Michigan, for example, in 2020 was decided by just 2.6% margin of victory, which holds 16 crucial electoral votes that Joe Biden cannot afford to lose if he is going to win again in 2024. The letter continues, we call on the White House to urgently advocate for an immediate ceasefire. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby, he's maintained that the U.S. believes a ceasefire would only benefit Hamas, which it would. I mean, why would you support a ceasefire to a terrorist group that is responsible for the deaths of thousands of people? I don't think Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is going to support such a ceasefire. The Biden administration has indicated that they might support pauses along the way in order to let some of the civilians in Gaza evacuate. While Muslim and Arab American groups threaten to withhold their votes from Biden, the president's support among these groups has already begun to slip. Just 17% of Arab Americans, according to a poll, support Joe Biden, as opposed to 59% of the community who supported him in 2020. Some of Biden's closest allies are warning that the president may have tied himself too closely to Israel, leaving the U.S. to bear responsibility for how the country carries out its war. Young members of the Democrat Party are also threatening to withhold their votes from Biden over his support of Israel. A 28-year-old woman at a pro-Palestinian protest told the New York Times that she feels betrayed by President Joe Biden. Speaking of the war in Israel and the terrorists taking hostages, the world's been watching, of course, and waiting on the release of hostages taken by Hamas. Protests in Israel are calling on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to make the rescue of hostages a main priority, which they feel that Netanyahu has not. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum, it's a volunteer group. They were formed to help advocate for Israeli hostages that were taken by Hamas. They've established a protest space in a square across the street from Tel Aviv Museum of Art, which is right near the Defense Ministry. A crowd of demonstrators amassed there last weekend during a speech that Netanyahu was making to the nation. Two people using megaphones led chants of "Bring them home now, bring them home now" for about 20 minutes outside of Netanyahu's speech. Over 200 Israelis, as you know, were taken hostage by Hamas, and their families have become increasingly vocal in their calls for the prime minister to do more to help free their loved ones. It will have to be terrifying. I mean, if you've seen the images of the tunnels and some of the areas that the terrorists are keeping these hostages, and we know of the two elderly women in their 90s who were graciously, thank goodness, released by Hamas. We know the conditions that these hostages are being kept in. We just pray for their safe release. Hamas leaders have said that the group is, quote, ready to conduct an immediate prisoner exchange deal that includes the release of all Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails in exchange for all prisoners held by the Palestinian resistance. The representatives pressed the prime minister to accept everyone for everyone. This exchange, they feel, is a good exchange to get their loved ones back. There was an interesting response by Director Christopher Wray yesterday as we kind of move on from Israel. So here's what happened. Director Christopher Wray, FBI Director Christopher Wray, he was being questioned in the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Senator Rick Scott asked him a very, very simple question, I think. Is the United States safer from foreign terror threats today? Are we safer than when Joe Biden took office? Here's the exchange.
Is the United States safer from foreign terror threats today? Are we safer than when Joe Biden took office, from the day he took office?
What I would say to you is that the terror threats have elevated, but I also think there are a lot of things the country has done throughout law enforcement to be better prepared to deal with them.
So did you notice that long pause? It got uncomfortable. And if you could see the video, you see Director Wray, he's thinking. He's kind of staring off into space, sort of the deer in the headlights look, before he finally answered. And it uh, wasn't a very good endorsement of President Joe Biden either. It got very uncomfortable. Senator Scott wrote on X following the hearing, he said, I asked FBI Director Wray a very simple question. Is the U.S. safer today than it was before Joe Biden took office? After nearly 10 seconds of silence, he finally admitted what we all know. The terror threats have elevated. During the hearing, Wray warned that the threat of a terror attack against Americans has been raised to a whole other level due to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, of course. Wray testified, quote, the reality is that the terrorism threat has been elevated throughout 2023, but the ongoing war in the Middle East has raised the threat of an attack against Americans in the U.S. to a whole other level. The war in Israel, of course, has renewed concerns of American safety, as we have seen a flood of illegals coming across the southern border. We don't know who they are. Uh, we continue to see them, thousands and thousands. Record number again in September since Joe Biden has taken office. Almost 2.5 million people have come into our country illegally. Who are they? If Hamas has been planning this terrorist attack against Israel, which they claim that they have for months, how do we know that they haven't been sending people over to Mexico to walk into the U.S.? Following the hearing, the White House said that it, quote, couldn't possibly answer whether terrorists had already crossed over the southern border amid the ongoing crisis there and the increased security threats in the Middle East when pressed by Fox News. Of course, they can't answer it because they have no idea who's been coming across that southern border. Comments are welcome on the Truth text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Of course, you can leave a quick voice message as well, and as time permits, we will share that with you. If you've listened to me for any length of time, you know that Peg and I love Downton Abbey. In fact, back in the summer when we had the opportunity to visit the UK, we had the chance to travel out to Highclere Castle, where the TV series was taped. Downton is the story, if you've never watched it, it's the story of this huge English estate where the rich royalty live upstairs and you have the paid servants downstairs. And you watch these two parallel stories take place throughout the episodes. There's a scene where the servants, they're all gathered around a Ouija board until the butler, Carson, comes in and makes them put the board up. Now, some people take Ouija boards seriously, while others see them as just a board game. I'm assuming that you are familiar with what a Ouija board is. There's a priest who is challenging this game, a Catholic priest. Ouija boards and other attempts to converse with the dead are spiritually dangerous practices that should not be viewed as innocent fun, an exorcist priest told Fox Digital News. Father Dan Rehill said, we too often forget that there is much more to this world than meets the eye. Angels, demons, spirits, and souls do exist, and they can have an impact on our life, he said. Rehill is a priest of the Diocese of Nashville. In 2018, he received special training to perform exorcisms. This was done in Rome, and he was installed as the exorcist of the Diocese of Nashville that same year. I didn't realize there really was exorcists. I mean, I've seen the movie. I've seen this talked about. I didn't realize it was a real thing. Father Rehill said, is a priest chosen and installed by a bishop to exercise the office of deliverance ministry. Exorcism is a specific form of prayer that the Catholic Church uses against the power of the devil. The Catholic Church distinguishes between two forms of exorcisms. Exorcisms are either major or minor, he said. A major exorcism is performed only for one who is demonstrably possessed by a demon or demons and may only be performed by a priest the bishop has specifically permitted to do so, he explained. Conversely, a minor exorcism is associated with sacraments and blessings, he said. Demonologists distinguish three levels of demonic incursion. These three levels are temptation, obsession, which is also called oppression, and possession. Exorcist priest Monsignor Stephen Rossetti was on Fox and Friends yesterday. He was asked about people who don't believe that demons are real. Here's the exchange as he talks about exorcisms and how serious they can be.
There are even some priests and some bishops who feel that way.
That's too bad.
It reminds me of Father Gabriel Moore's story, the famous exorcist from Rome. It was some cardinal said to him, you know, I don't believe in all that Satan stuff, whatever. He said, well, Your Eminence, I have a book I want you to read. He said, really? What book is that? He said, it's the Bible. So start with the Bible.
Good point. Good point.
So we played a little movie characterization of this, but how does it really play out when you're brought in to perform an exorcism?
Well, it can get pretty wild. I mean, when someone's fully possessed, when you pray over them, the demons start to manifest and it gets ugly. You know, you're looking at a pack of demons, not the individual. Typically, people don't levitate and all that sort of stuff you see on TV, but sometimes some pretty wild stuff happens. But it's intense. It can take quite some time, many sessions. But the exciting thing is when people get their lives back. I mean, that's one of the great things about this ministry is their lives are a wreck and the demons are tormenting them. And when they're cast out, you know, they for example, that movie, The Exorcist, the individual is actually based on a real case. And he was liberated and lived a normal life and just died a couple of years ago, I think. So he's a success.
Huh. Interesting. Temptation, he said, is something that is experienced by everyone. Obsession is when demons torment people physically, spiritually, mentally, or emotionally, or some combination of these. Possession, which is arguably the most well-known of the three levels, he explained, is when a demon or demons take physical possession of a person's body and make use of its faculties, he said. Possession is usually intermittent, almost never an uninterrupted possessing of the person's body, he explained. Attempting occult practices, such as purportedly trying to contact the dead via the Ouija board, or a way to open oneself up to demonic activity inadvertently, he said. He explained that demons lie and impersonate dead people. Father Rehill explained when asking a board for information about a deceased person or a life decision, they're also too happy to embed themselves into your life. Using a Ouija board is inviting a demon into your life, whether the person has that intention or not. Okay, I'm not quite sure what my response is. A Ouija board? I mean, do you think that people actually take these seriously? I mean, I remember we had a Ouija board as a kid, but I just looked at it as a game. I never really thought that someone or some spirit was actually speaking to us. Did you? Love to get your comments on the Truth text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. What do you think? Do you think that there is something to this whole Ouija board thing? The Ouija board, if you're not familiar with it, it was first developed in the late 19th century as a parlor game. They were formerly called talking boards. At the time, seances and other spiritual practices were quite popular activities. Speaking of seances and spiritual practices, Bill O'Reilly has a great book out right now in his Killing series, and it's about the Salem witch hunts. We're going to have Bill on the podcast soon to talk about his book. It's quite interesting and horrifying to know what these people in Salem, Massachusetts went through. But the Ouija board, it consists of an alphabet and the words yes, no, and goodbye. And as you know, if you've ever done it, you put your hands on this plastic board thing and it moves around, or at least you think it does. In 1890, a Baltimore spiritualist and medium named Helen Peters asked the talking board what she could call it, or what she should call it. The website for the Talking Board Historical Society, the board responded Ouija, which it said meant good luck. So the Ouija board was patented the following year, according to history. Legend regarding the Ouija board's patent says that Peters accompanied attorney Elijah Bond to the patent office, where the two were instructed by the patent officer to prove that the board worked by spelling out his name. This according to the Smithsonian Magazine. Peters reportedly asked spirits for assistance and then spelled out the patent officer's name. It's unclear if Bond or Peters somehow knew the patent officer's name ahead of time, but the patent was awarded on February the 10th, 1891. I had no idea Ouija boards had been around that long. It said that he was a white-faced and visibly shaken patent officer, according to the Smithsonian. The boards were then mass-produced by the Kennard Novelty Company, which was sold to Parker Brothers in 1967. Today, Ouija board is produced by Hasbro. It markets the product as a way to communicate with the, quote, spirit world. Fox News Digital reached out to Hasbro for comment, but did not hear back from the publication. Hasbro, on their website, they say, enter the world of the mysterious and mystifying with the Ouija board. You've got questions, and the spirit world has answers, and the uncanny Ouija board is your way to get them. Again, I'd love to get your feedback on this. Send me a quick text or leave me a message at 864-477-JOEY. The Truth text line, 864-477-5639. It goes on to say, while the Ouija board is marketed as a toy or board game, Father Rehill and some churches, from their point of view, disagrees with this characterization. Father Rehill said Ouija boards should not be viewed in the same way as a typical board game. Although it's advertised as a game, it is far from it, he said. Rather, it's a form of evil. Occult practices are, of course, condemned by the Bible. He reminded us. He said the very action of using the Ouija board has profound spiritual consequences that are beyond our control. Perhaps the most famous instance of purported demonic possession connected to Ouija board uses was the case of Roland Doe, a young teenage boy from Maryland who underwent numerous major exorcisms back in the 1940s. Doe's story was adapted into the 1970 book, 71, The Exorcist, which you probably are familiar with, written by William Peter Blatty, which was then made into the 1973 hit movie starring Ellen Bernstein and Linda Blair. Rehill told Fox that he has personally seen 6 cases of demonic oppression that stemmed from Ouija board usage. He said the victims were left with night terror, suicidal ideation, despair, and one man was impaled with chicken bones in his leg that flew across the kitchen. This is getting a little far out there from me. The father warned us to stay away from all forms of occult practices and stay close to God. Well, I can't argue with that. Staying close to God for sure. Your comments are welcome on the Truth text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. You can also leave a quick voice message, and your emails are welcome too, joey@joeyhudson.com. I'm so appreciative of all of you who have joined me in this new podcast. We're going to have some fun. We're going to go down, drill down a little deeper on some issues. My goal is to keep you informed, to educate you on the issues, give you a chance to offer feedback as well through the Truth text line. Be sure and let your friends and your family know about Just the Truth podcast. If they haven't already subscribed, they simply just need to go to my website, joeyhudson.com, click on the button to connect with me or to subscribe to the podcast. Again, joeyhudson.com, click on subscribe to podcast button. On the Truth text line, getting a lot of good comments here. Del Linda says, we would all love to hear you on 94.5 in the morning if you change your mind. Well, actually, there's not an option for me to change my mind there. We certainly enjoyed our time on 94.5, The Answer. But as always, there's a time for everything, and that time it's behind us now. Teresa writes, I felt my whole day was like a squirrel all over the place because I didn't have your show to listen to. It stunk. I remembered when I got to work, I could have listened to your podcast. Well, of course, just listen to the podcast. She said there is a better day tomorrow with that to look forward to. Thank you, Teresa. Marion writes, welcome to retirement world. I did it 5 years ago, almost 50 years as a residential building contractor. Not an easy transition, Marion says, but you will figure it out, Joey. I'll be listening to your podcast. Good luck. Well, thank you, Marion. Peter says, sure was different listening to the radio yesterday. Just not going to be the same without hearing y'all in the mornings. I'll be listening to the podcast. Nathan writes, and Nathan is from Forest City. He says, I got to say, I'm loving the podcast. Well, thank you, Nathan. I'm 23, so it's a little easier to navigate the podcast genre for me than some, I'm sure, but overall, I'm loving the format. I love the intro to the show. Makes me feel like I'm still listening to the Morning Answer, but with an update. And glad to hear that PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios again as well. I've listened both mornings on the way to work, and I can say that I think God's got big plans for this next chapter. The possibilities are endless with the format, and the ball is totally in your court. So keep up the good work, and people will always support you and what you're doing. It's like you say, God's got this. Well, thank you, Nathan. He does. And you're right. We're going to do this together. Chris writes, I was miss listening to 94.5 in the morning and having you fill us in on what's going on. However, I enjoy listening to your podcast. The nice thing about the podcast is I can pause it and not miss anything at all, and I don't have to worry about the commercials. Well, we will have a few of those because we do have to remind you about our partner, PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. But you're right. That's the great thing about a podcast. You can stop it, start it. You can listen to it anytime you like, if as opposed to my former morning radio show where you had to listen between 6A and 9A, and I had to get up at 4 a.m. So it has its advantages. Chris says, it's nice to just have you talking. I do miss hearing Tommy, though. I hope he'll be on a podcast from time to time. God bless you, Joey, and thank you for being honest and to the point. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you listening as well. Faye writes, oh, my, Joey, the good talk shows are taking off and the bad ones are wide open. One host even told that he didn't believe in Jesus coming back to take the good to heaven. I thought Joey is off and you're still on the air. I'm enjoying your podcast, however. Keep telling us the truth. Well, Faye, that's what Just the Truth is all about. Andy says, thank you, Joey. It's not the same. Thank goodness for your sponsor, PhD, to keep somewhat rolling along. Look forward to the Wednesday podcast. Andy, I hope you're listening. Appreciate you joining us on Just the Truth. Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson failed to get on the ballot for South Carolina's Republican presidential primary, raising some further doubts as to whether or not he even has a shot in 2024. The White House hopeful missed yesterday's deadline, which yesterday was the deadline for all candidates to file to be on the ballot in South Carolina's presidential preference primary. That will be held February the 24th. That means Hutchinson won't even have a shot at winning any of South Carolina's 50 Republican convention delegates. 10 candidates will be on the ballot. Of course, former President Donald Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, U.S. Senator Tim Scott, former South Carolina Governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley will be on the ballot. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Ryan Binkley, a Texas businessman. He's another one of those candidates that you just don't hear anything from, right? I mean, Ryan Binkley. Has he even been to South Carolina? Entrepreneur David Stuckenberg, that's a new one on me as well. And Texas tax consultant John Anthony Castro will be on the South Carolina ballot. To win the GOP presidential nomination, a candidate needs to support a majority of the Republican delegates when they meet in Milwaukee at the Republican Party National Convention. Again, Asa Hutchinson will not be one of those. Along with their filing paperwork, candidates had to pay a non-refundable $50,000 filing fee. $50,000 to get on the South Carolina ballot. Of that total, we're told $20,000 is paid to the South Carolina State Election Commission, and the other $30,000 will go towards the South Carolina Republican Party's Victory Program, which provides financial support for all GOP candidates in the Palmetto State. Now that the filing deadline has come and gone, the GOP field here in South Carolina, of course, is set. If a candidate wants to remove their name, which that's happened sometimes because some of these candidates could potentially drop out of the race before February, they have to let that be known by January the 2nd, which is about 2 weeks before the January 15th Iowa caucuses. John Michael Catalano, a spokesperson for the South Carolina Election Commission, said that the date was chosen with overseas and military voters in mind. Those voters must be sent their ballots at least 45 days before the election to give them time. Democrats will face their filing deadline soon. The filing period for Democrat presidential candidates in South Carolina opens tomorrow at 9 a.m. and then it closes 10 days later for the February 3rd Democrat Party primary. Let's take just a minute for me to talk with you about PhD weight loss and nutrition. 3 years ago, I was very fortunate to meet Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team in the Greenville office at PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. And boy, am I glad that I met Dr. Lucas, because she literally changed my life like she has changed a lot of lives. If you want to lose 10, 20, 30 pounds, I lost 30 pounds in just a matter of a few months. And the good news is I've been able to keep that weight off for 3 years now. And that's what I love about the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition program. It's based on the science of nutrition. They talk with you about what to eat, why to eat, and how to eat. And I promise you, you're going to feel better. You're going to be able to focus. You're going to be able to sleep better, do things that you haven't been able to do in a long, long time. So if you want to lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more, I've had listeners who've lost 135 pounds. Give them a call today to set up your initial consultation. 864-252-4925. That's 864-252-4925. You can also go online to myphdweightloss.com. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition, the official partner of the Clemson Tigers. Speaking of the Tigers, did you hear Dabo's radio interview the other day? After spending the last decade or so at the top of college football, Clemson currently is 4-4. Look, my South Carolina Gamecocks, they're not doing much better. So I can't say anything here, but it is a bit unusual. My sweet wife Peg, the Clemson fan that she is, it's a new sensation for Clemson in recent years to be 4-4. Outkick.com highlighted Coach Swinney's weekly radio call, where a young man called into the show, and you know how radio call-in shows, how that can go sometimes. Outkick highlighted Coach Swinney's call from a caller named Trey. They wrote, another loss this past weekend, this time to NC State. Fans took to the radio to either praise Dabo Swinney or give him the business. Obviously, this stuff happens during a call-in show when a radio producer has no idea what the actual question will be. Now, look, I have to say, quite often when Tommy would screen the call, a caller would tell him one thing and actually ask another. That happens quite often in radio. Dabo got a little heated with this particular caller when he delivered what is being called an epic response to the fan questioning his $11.5 million salary. Here's how the exchange went.
Bring Tyler into the program. Tyler, hope that you're doing well. You're up with Coach.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you said, Coach Swinney. It sounded a whole lot like Tommy Bowden. And I'll tell you one thing, Tommy Bowden didn't make the same amount of money as you do. You make $11.5 million a year. That's second in college football, if I'm not mistaken. I'm curious why that salary has led to a 4-4. And I know we're going to talk about, just being a couple plays away from undefeated and all that. And I know you're a man of religion. I'm a big fan, Coach. Before you categorize me as being in the 1.5%, I was going to Clemson games, and my entire family, going back generations, been going to Clemson games before, when you were in commercial real estate. So I'm not going to accept being in that 1.5%. And I respect the fact that you're a man of faith. I'm curious if you've ever read Proverbs 16:18, which talks about pride coming before the fall. I was in the military, and I was overseas for the big run, and so I couldn't watch all the games. I tried my best, but I always watched the press conferences just for life advice, and I appreciated all that. Something changed after 2018. You're humble, you're hungry, and everything. And I always told people, man, Dabo, just listen to his press conferences. After that 2018 national title, something changed, and it seems to be a lot of arrogance that came in. There was a lot of friends and family. I mean, 3 of the 10 on-field football coaches are external, experienced hires. Everyone else was an internal hire that had no experience before, or was a former player or friend. So I'm curious, why are we paying you $11.5 million to go 4-4? And it's not just this year. It's been just a refusal to accept.
All right. What's this guy's name?
Tyler.
Hey, Tyler. I've listened to enough of you, Tyler. Listen, you can have all your opinions that you want. All right. I don't know how old you are. Don't really care. All right. But let me tell you something. We won 11 games last year, and you're part of the problem, to be honest with you, because that is part of the problem. It's people like you that all you do is the appreciation. The expectation is greater than the appreciation. And that's the problem. And so, we've won 12 10-plus win seasons in a row. That's happened 3 times in 150 years. So if you want to know why, Clemson ain't sniffed a national championship for 35 years. We've won 2 in 7 years. And there's only 2 other teams that can say that, Georgia and Alabama. Okay? Is this a bad year? Yeah. And it's my responsibility. Take 100% responsibility for it. But all this bull crap you're thinking, all these narratives you read, listen, man, you can have your opinion all you want. And you can apply for the job. And good luck to you. All right? But to answer your question, all right, we're second in draft picks. We've graduated 98% of our guys. We're second in wins. All right? If you want to know why, again, I'm telling you, we're not perfect. There's a lot of teams that, Frank Howard never had a bad year. Coach Ford never had a bad year. Coach K has never had a bad year in basketball. People have a bad year. But the part of the problem is the appreciation. I used to tell people all the time, they'd say, what's the difference in Clemson? I'm going to tell you. At some places there's an expectation, but at Clemson there's an appreciation. And what's happened at Clemson is we've won so much that even when it used to be the fun's in the winning, now even when you win, people like you complain and criticize the coaches and question everything. People like you, all right, when I hired Tony Elliott to be the offensive coordinator who never called a play in his life, I'm sure you were critical then. All right, and he took us to 2 national championships. People like you who just love to destroy people with your comments, all right? I'm sure you've never made any bad decisions. I'm sure you've lived a perfect life. I'm sure you've led a bunch of people. I'm sure you do your job in front. So to answer your question, I started as the lowest paid coach in this freaking business, all right? And I'm where I am because I've worked my ass off every single day. And I ain't going to let some smart-ass kid get on this phone and create this stuff. So if you got a problem with it, I don't care. All right? I work for the Board of Trustees, the president, and the AD. And if they're tired of me leading this program, all they got to do is let me know. I'll go somewhere else where there is an appreciation. All right? It's not just winning, it's how you win. And we are this is a tough year, but we've had 12 10-plus win seasons in a row. 12. We lost to Tennessee last year. They won 11 games for the first time in like 20 years. We've had 11 win seasons in whatever, 11 years or whatever. We've won 2 national championships. Clemson went 35 years. All right, probably since before you were born, your whole freaking life. And we've won 2 in 7 years. And we earned it. And we beat the best of the best to do it. The best of the best. 12 10-plus win seasons. So if you want to know why, that's why. Am I perfect? Nope. I'm far from it. I am a man of faith. Absolutely. All right? I'm 53 years old, and there ain't one thing in my life. I have been a part of failure many times, but there ain't one thing in my life that I've ever failed at, Tyler. Never. All right? Ever. I wanted to get an education. I got 2 degrees. I wanted to be the first college in my graduate, my family. I did it. I wanted to go play football at Alabama. I earned a scholarship, lettered 3 years, worked my ass off, won a national championship. I wanted to get into coaching. I worked my way to being a head coach. And when I got this job, and I'm sure you didn't want me to get this job, all right, and 15 years later, I'm still here, and I'd say the results are what they are, and I stand on them. So you don't ever have to call back. I wanted to get married. I've been married for going on 30 years. I wanted to be a father. I've raised 3 great sons. If you don't like how I run the program, don't be a fan. I don't care. But I'm the head coach, and I'm going to do what I believe is right for the long term of this program, what's best for the players, and what I think is best for the moment. If you got a problem with that, that's fine. But I'm not going to sit here and let you call. I don't give a crap how much money I make. You ain't going to talk to me like I'm 12 years old. You'd be freaking kidding me.
Is Dabo right? Would love to hear from some of you Tiger fans. Your comments are welcome on the Truth text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Of course, you can leave a quick message, and you can also email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Look, it's safe to assume that Dabo is starting to feel the pressure, which is normal at this point. But after successful football seasons, fans expect the same outcome year after year. And Dabo was very, very right. I mean, you can't win every year. So what do you think? Was Tyler out of place, or was Dabo not earning the $11.4 million? I'm going to give, even though I'm a Gamecock fan, I'm going to give Dabo the benefit of the doubt. He's a good man, good Christian man, and I think Tyler probably was a little out of place. What do you think? 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your text message are welcome, as are your comments. Leave a quick message, and you can email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. That's it for today's Just the Truth. Thanks again for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition studio. To lose the weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list, go to my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on Connect with Joey, and encourage all your friends to join us. Thanks for spending a few minutes of your time with me today. Until next time, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.